Welcome to our second lecture covering court documents. I forgot to show this last time, I apologize, and wanted to kind of finish up the topic of the cover letter. So I'd actually done some research on Westlaw and found a little bit of a discussion about how cover letters are used in Texas, and so I wanted to highlight this for you. Again, this is part of a motion practice. So if you're filing a motion, here are the things that you attach. And there's lots of things that you attach, but the one thing that we're going to cover is the cover letter. We're going to have this if we're filing in paper format or if there's a local rule. I already showed you last time we were together about the local rules. So again, here we go. Where are the local rules? Here we go. Here are the local rules that we talked about. So this isn't something that is necessarily required everywhere nowadays, now that we have e-filing. Let's see, here we go. So I just wanted to show you again, it was a commonly done thing here. If you were filing in a paper format, I may not even talk about them anymore because that is so rare. But again, the cover letter, here we go. Let's see. Let me just do cover letter here. Here we go. A cover letter to the court if paper filing. In this letter, the movant's attorney asks the court clerk to file the motion or whatever the particular court document is and the supporting documents in the identified case, and to return a file stamp copy to the filing attorney. So it's a very short letter. It's really just to here. Basically, you're saying, here it is, send me back a copy. So anyway, wanted to cover that before we go on and talk about the caption. So now we're ready to really get started. So what I thought we would do here is I would open up a new document, fresh, and I'm going to just do really quick my checks. I have Times New Roman 12, I have black font. I'm going to do 1.15. We have add. I'm going to check my margins, which are all normal, so it looks like we're good to go. So let's get started on creating, let me just go ahead and name it so I don't forget. So I'm going to call this Caption Practice. Okay, so let's go through our instructions here. So we should not set up a table. You'll see that some of the models that I offer in this course do have a table for the caption. Some people like to do it that way. Given the way that we're formatting our caption, though, it is significantly more difficult if you use a table. So my suggestion and my instructions here don't involve using a table. If you find that the model that you've pulled up has a table, my suggestion is to just go ahead and remove the table and follow these instructions. I don't count off for the table, but I would say 90% of the time when people use the table, they end up getting a deduction because they don't have the formatting right. And so it just makes things a lot more difficult. So if you want to use the table and you're really good at Word, you can do it, but why would you want to? Okay, so let's get started with this. So obviously, if we were starting with the form and the form was not a Texas state court form, I would encourage you just to delete the caption and start from scratch. If it is a Texas state form, you definitely can use that caption as a starting point. Just remember, though, that if the way that the particular legal writer who wrote the form set up his caption, even though it's in the state of Texas, it may have some differences between how I'm instructing you to set it up. And so you'll need to make some adjustments even if you keep the overall form. We are going to be working on a state court form. The federal court form is pretty different. Let me just show you an example of what I'm talking about. Here is an example of a Texas state court form. It's not perfect, but this is generally how it's going to look. Here's an example of a federal court form. This is actually from Oklahoma, but this is exactly with one detail difference. This is how a Texas federal court form would look. So you can see we have the court up here and we have the case number over here. Whereas in Texas, we have the case number on top and we have the court on the left side. So it looks similar, maybe from a distance or without drilling down to the details, but there's important differences between the two. And so we're just going to be doing the state court. Obviously, if you need to develop one for a federal court, you'll want to look at a model to make sure that you have that right. Not something that I'm going to cover in this particular class. Okay, so let's talk about how we're going to get started. So just generally, a rule of thumb to keep in mind is that we're going to be capitalizing all major words. So let me just show you what I mean. I'm talking about major words. These are the same words that we capitalize when we are doing titles of documents and things like that. So I'm capitalizing the L in Larry and the B in Baxter, they're proper names. This particular document did not capitalize next, the N in next, and the F in friend, and the N in minor, but we would. The better practice would be to capitalize the N, the F, and the M. But we wouldn't capitalize as, we wouldn't capitalize of, we wouldn't capitalize A. We capitalize N because it's the first word in the line, but we wouldn't capitalize the. We'd capitalize the D and the C, the J and the D and the C and the T. And here we capitalize all of these letters, but we wouldn't capitalize DBA. We would capitalize plaintiffs and we would capitalize defendants. We won't be capitalizing the V. Up here we will capitalize cause and number. So you'll see most words, these little bitty words like as, of, a, things like that are going to be lowercase. We are going to begin by centering because we're going to do that cause number, and we can see that it is actually a centered situation. We aren't going to do the approximate center with a tab and things like that because we're not trying to line it up with something below it. So we really and truly are just going to use the centering command. So again, this is just hitting our middle choice. So I'm in the home area here. I go over, I hit the center, and I type cause number. I hit space, and then I'm going to do some number. Usually these have some letters, usually CIV and some other combinations, but just for ease, I'm going to do the cause number this way. Now, it's cause number, it's not case number. Okay, so that's important to keep in mind. That's not a typo. The U does belong. So now we have completed the particular first line of our caption. Couldn't have been easier, right? Sometimes you'll see that sometimes people will fancy it up. For example, this particular person used, I don't even know what font that is. It's italics and it's a weird font. No, we're not doing any of that stuff. We're just going to use Times New Roman 12 point. If you want to be crazy, you can make it all bold if you want to, the whole caption. You don't have to make it bold, but you can if you want to. But that's the limit of our craziness. There's no need to have anything in italics unless you're using some kind of a foreign word. But even that, you wouldn't have to italicize. So we're not going to italicize our cause number. Now I acted like we knew our cause number, and we do know it most of the time. But if I'm filing a petition, I'm not going to know what my cause number is because at the time that I'm writing it up, the clerk's office doesn't even know I'm going to file a lawsuit. So how could they have assigned a cause number to it yet? So if I am filing my petition, what I'm going to, what I'm going to do instead, what I'm going to do instead of guessing what the number is, because obviously I would never be able to guess, is after the spaces, I'm just going to do underline, about 15 spaces. This gives the clerk's office a place to stamp electronically the cause number. Once I get it, then everything I file after it, I'm just going to insert that cause number. But I won't know what it is until after I file my petition. So this is the only time I'm going to use this particular format. Most likely that's why, let me just go back to that example I was like, most likely that's why this particular person italicized it. They're kind of trying to match the way the clerk's stamp looks. There's no need to. There's no reason to. So that's probably the thought process, but we're rejecting that thought process. Okay, so let's go back to our format and let's see what our next instruction is. Okay, so now we're going to go to the next line, and we're going to do, so we're going to go to the next line. We're not going to stop centering it. Okay, left, justify, and then tab. So here we go. So we've left justified, and we can see it's left justified over here. When you can tell it's left justified if there's a straight line on the left side and there's what's called a ragged or ripply line on the right side. So now I'm going to tab over to the approximate center. This probably looks like the center to me. It could be 1 over. I'm going to go here. Doesn't really matter. It's usually going to be 3 inches if you have preset tabs. And I'm going to insert a section sign. The way to do it is to go to Insert and Symbol. Because I use a section sign all the time, it's going to be one of these. It's actually right here. So I don't have to look it up. But if I'm on a new computer, I don't routinely use it. If I were going to look up the section sign, I hit Symbol here, and I would look. No, it's not there. Well, it actually is, but let's pretend it's not. Then I go to More Symbols, and I would need to look it up. Okay? But you're going to use a section symbol so often that you definitely won't need to look it up. Then I'm going to go to the next line, and I am ready to go. So I've finished F. Now I'm going to go down to G. On the next line, we're going to type the plaintiff's names using ending the line with a comma. Okay, now this works if we have only one plaintiff. So we're going to say it's Bob Smith, comma. We're done. We're going to tab over, and I'm going to do another section symbol. I'm still in Insert, so I'm just going to hit Symbol, Section. And then I'm going to see what I do next. Okay, now I'm going to tab once more after the section symbol and type in the district court. So tab in, in the district court. You'll see occasionally people will capitalize all these words. That's fine, but that's not what we do in our law firm, so we're not going to capitalize it. Okay, now I'm ready. So I've returned. I hit the Enter key, and I'm back to my left margin, which is exactly where I want to be. Oops, sorry, hit the wrong button there. Okay, so now I'm assuming it's a district court. There's actually other courts like county courts, justice of the peace court, justice of the peace court. If you're obviously in a different court, you're not going to say in the district court. You're going to type whatever kind of court that particular court is. And now we're going to go to the status of our client, which is J. So we're going to describe Bob Smith. He's the plaintiff, so I'm going to tab over and type plaintiff. I type plaintiff because there's just one of Bob, right? That's pretty easy. So now I'm going to again do my symbol, tab, and go to the next line. Then I am going to go to the next line. We're going to leave this blank. Is this strictly speaking necessary? No. If for whatever reason you want to have a smaller caption, you could do that. This is just how we're going to do it in this class. So in the real world, feel free to ignore this. I'm just wanting to show you a nice looking caption. We're going to go to the next line, and now we're ready to do our V sign, our versus sign. And this time we're going to do a V and a period. You'll see why I did that space in a few minutes when we get to that. So do V lowercase, V, and then a period. It's going to sit on the left margin. I'm not going to tab the V in, and I'm going to tab over. Now you'll see that sometimes my tab number is going to vary. For example, I have 6 tabs here. I have 6 tabs here because, of course, V is very short. But after Bob Smith, I only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tabs. And you can imagine if there are more names, I might have fewer tabs. So now I'm going to do a section symbol. And I'm going to now indicate the court number. Now, since I have the case number or cause number, I would also have the court number, because when the cause number is assigned, also the court number is assigned. So I'm going to see, let's see, what language am I supposed to use here? Well, I'm going to say judicial district is going to be how it ends. So I'm just going to type judicial district. And then I'm going to put a space. And now I'm going to write my number. You'll see why I did it in that order in just a second. I'm going to say it's the 199th. We're looking for an ordinal number here. An ordinal number is one of those numbers that has the TH or the ST. In other words, it suggests a particular order of things. And so obviously, since this is 199th, I'm going to do TH. And now I'm done. You may say, well, why did you do it in that weird order? Let me do it in the line above. Let's say that I had not written or typed in my judicial district first, but I just started at 199 TH. Now I'm going to hit the space bar so I can type judicial district. When I hit the space bar, my TH is going to superscript. For our class, we're not going to do a superscripting. Other people you will commonly see superscripting on this, and so your law firm may think superscripting is an awesome thing, but for us, we don't want the superscripting. And so the way to do it again is after the H, you don't want to hit the space bar. Hitting the space bar is what superscripts. So if you've already added the space bar, you can type the H and then just move to the next line, and you're good to go. There are other ways of avoiding the superscripting. This is just kind of the easiest way of kind of showing it to you. So let's go back up here and look at the plaintiff. I just had one plaintiff, but maybe we have Bob Smith and Larry Green. Well, obviously we're going to have to remove some of our tabs, but now we're fine. But let's say it's more than just Bob Smith and Larry Green. It's also Teresa Brown. So what we might decide is actually that does work. I'm going to make her last name Brown Baker. You can see it's now impossible to have all of our plaintiffs on one line and keep our section signs in line. We could move all of our section signs over, but that's probably not the best choice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move and Larry Green to the next line. So I have to, I could make the line separating them wherever I want to, but that's where I've chosen to do it. So I'm going to now put another section symbol here. And so now I'm going to put an S because we have more than one plaintiff. We'll get rid of that extra space. So now we're good. This is perfectly fine. The spacing of these terms, you'll have 3 items that go on this side, and you'll basically have, for most captions, kind of 3 categories on this side: the plaintiff, the V, and the defendant. So you want to have in the district court kind of balanced in the plaintiff's area. You want to have the court number about where the V is, and you want to have the county where the defendant is. You don't want to have it kind of unbalanced, but there is no magical line that you have to be on. Again, I'm going to want to see in the district court on one of the lines where you list the plaintiffs, and I'm going to want to see the district court on the V line. But beyond that, you have some flexibility if you have more than one line for these things. So now we're ready for our next line, which is you can see because of my tabbing here, the 1 in 199th lines up with the I. Let me make this a little bit easier to read. It lines up with the I here. Again, because I'm tabbing and I'm keeping my tabs the same, it's going to line up nicely. So now I'm going to go to the next line, and I'm going to have another blank line. Like I have a blank line above the V and a blank line below the V. So that's instruction M. So let me go ahead and add that. So tab, 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 tab. Next line. Now we're ready for the defendants. Let's see what we do there. So it's basically the same thing as we did with the plaintiffs. We're going to list them on the left margin. We're not indenting anything. So we're going to say that it's a company. We're going to say it's Solar Energy Company LLC. But we're going to add a DBA. DBA. Now you can see I'm about to run out of space, so I'm going to just go ahead and do my symbol here, and I'll continue the name of the business on the next line. So now on this line, since we're in the defendants area, we're going to give us the county. So we're going to do blank county. We'll assume that we're in Collin County, so Collin County, comma, Texas. So here we go. Tab, Collin County, Texas. Go to the next line. So I'm continuing with the name, and this company does business as Fun in the Sun. We'll just say that that's just the full name of the business. So I'm obviously going to have to add another symbol. And now I'm ready for our defendant line. So I'm going to tab over. Now, this is just one business. It has its legal name and its DBA name. But that's just like, you know, my legal name is Cynthia Groover, but I go by my DBA name is Cindy. So, but I mean, if I were describing myself as Cynthia or Cindy, I wouldn't say, you know, it's not two of me, there's just one of me, so it's going to be defendant. And I need to tab one for here. I need to have a comma after this. And then I indent and I do a period. So there's a comma here and there's a period here. Let me get rid of the extra spaces. Okay, so let's look a little bit more into DBAs. Here we go. So here's a fairly approachable definition. So DBA stands for doing business as. It's a fictional or assumed name, but there's nothing menacing about it. For example, Chili's is actually Brinker International. Red Lobster is actually Darden Company or something like that. So DBAs are really familiar because after all, it's more fun to eat at a Chili's than a Brinker International restaurant. Also, in many cases, a company may have several different businesses with different names that are customer facing, but they're all under one organization. So here we have an example that there's a company called Ken's Landscaping Services. It's an LLC, which you probably remember we discussed when we were in the business organizations unit. He wants to establish a DBA for Ken's golf course. Maybe he specializes in golf course maintenance, or maybe he does homes, and that'll be one DBA, Ken's beautiful front yard. And he has another that's Ken's golf course. He might have another Ken's corporate campus or something like that. allows him to market and differentiate his customers. And so this is a doing business as name, but there's nothing sneaky about it. This is the legal name, Ken's Landscaping Services LLC, but he might well have many DBAs. And so if you were suing Ken's Golf Course, you wouldn't want to sue Ken's Golf Course because it's just a DBA. What you do is you'd sue Ken's Landscaping Services, DBA, Ken's Golf Course. So hopefully that makes sense to you. Okay, so we now have our caption ready to go, except for we need one more line. Oops, sorry, the wrong button here. And so we're going to end it with a blank line with just the section symbol. So I'm going to go back to here and I'm going to tab over and I'm going to enter the section symbol. I'm going to turn off the Pilcrow so we can see it a little bit less of a crazy way. So this is nice. Now let's just look at some choices we could have made that are different. One thing as I look at this is this seems a little bit unbalanced. I have 2 spaces here and only 1 space here. So I might choose to move this down 1, or maybe I move this down 1. I think I'm actually going to move this down 1. So I'm going to cut, I'm going to tab over and balance it. So just keep in mind there will need to be sometimes some rebalancing of some of these terms so it looks a little nicer. I think there are some people who would add a space here, so there's a space between the cause number and the first section symbol. Let's say for whatever reason you wanted to have a smaller caption. This could be something that you delete. You could even delete this one. You could even delete this one. And you could delete this one. So I'm just going to show you what it looks like when we delete these. I'm going to cut. And I'm going to cut. Let's say you wanted to get it all on fewer pages, or right. So you could have a very tidy, tight caption. Having said that, while that is a possibility, this is usually the preferred way. It's just a more attractive. And for this class, I'm going to ask you to prepare it this way. So it's just a really nice, attractive appearance. Now, sometimes you'll see people who choose to justify these. We're not going to do that in this class. I'm not even going to show you how to do that because I don't want you to be tempted to do it. These are going to line up vertically. So the I, the 1, and the C are all going to be vertical. And you can see they're actually at 3.5 inches. And if you want to see that, you can take it up here and line it right by that marker and make sure everything lines up. So we're ready to go. Now, since I know the court number, I'm going to go back and add our cause number here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so we now are ready to go. We have a gorgeous caption. We are going to go move on and talk about the title of our document. Oh, before we do that, let's talk about our caption style. The one that we have created is very typical. It's a plaintiffs versus defendants. You might also sometimes see an appellant versus appellee. So instead of plaintiffs here, you would see appellants. Here you'd have appellees. There's some other choices out there too. You might sometimes see petitioner and respondent. But there are 2 other formats that I wanted to draw your attention to. And one of them I have an example for you. And here's an example of how we do a divorce petition in Texas. We don't have it C. Robert Connor versus Suzanne Connor. We start in the matter of the marriage of, and then we list both of the parties' names. The first name is going to be what we call the petitioner. The second name is going to be the respondent. And then we also list in the caption the children's names. Children are going to be children of the marriage. So in other words, Robert Connor and Suzanne Connor are the parents, maybe biological, maybe adoptive, of Robert Spencer Connor and Natalie Connor. So this is another style of caption that you'll be working on in this class. And then there's a third that I'm not even going to show you an example of, but that is in rem or in re. In re, and then whatever the object is. You see these many times in probate situations or in bankruptcy situations. So that's another alternative formatting thing. And now we're ready for the document title. So for the document title, we're going to leave a space blank between the last line of the caption and the document title. Then we're going to go back to center, and we're going to choose bold if we hadn't already chosen bold. As I said before, you can make your whole caption bold if you would like. I'm going to turn on my Velcro here so I can see what I'm doing. We go down this, I'm going to center, I'm going to hit bold, and now I'm going to type Plaintiff's first original petition. You may find some of the names, you might think to yourself, well, first original petition, that's kind of redundant, isn't it? How can it be second original petition or first amended petition or any of that? Well, believe it or not, it is possible to have something like that. See, I didn't mean a comma here. There's no comma here. The comma goes here, so it's doing business as defendant. I'm sorry. I left out. I'm sorry. Somehow or another I erased. My apologies. Okay, so doing business as fun in the sun. Like here, tab, 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 tab. Somehow or another I wasn't thinking that through, was I? Okay, so now we have it back to the right format. So these names are pretty much locked in stone. We need to call them the name. With the naming of motions, we can be a little bit creative, but with these terms like petition or answer, we're going to stick to the naming conventions that already exist. I'll give you that information, and over time you'll develop a pattern for that. So let's see where we are next. And we'll leave a space between the title and the first line. As I indicate, if you would like to make yours, oh sorry, wrong one there, down here. So you're going to leave one more space that's blank and then one more line. We'll get ready for our next format by turning off the turning off the bold and moving to the left justification. If you wanted to make this bigger, you can. We're going to capitalize all the major words in our title. So actually I have this wrong. We have more than one plaintiff, so we're going to do apostrophe S. But let's say that we didn't represent, let's say we only represented Bob Smith and Teresa Brown Baker. And there was a separate attorney who was representing Larry Green. This doesn't, actually let's say this is a motion. So plaintiff's motion for summary judgment. Okay, but we aren't all of the plaintiffs. We're just, we're not Larry Green. So the way that we would list that is plaintiffs, plaintiff Bob Smith's and plaintiff Teresa Brown Baker's motion for summary judgment. Let's see, so this works, but let's imagine that for whatever reason we wanted to make the font a little bit bigger. So we got to 14. You can see that it's not going to fit on one line. That's what I was trying to do. So you want to think through how you're going to balance it. What I would recommend in this case is just to do a break here. And that way it's going to be fairly balanced. What you don't want to have happen is that you have very few words on one line and lots of words on another line. You also ideally would like it to make sense logically where you do the split. So, you know, even though this isn't completely balanced, this might be perfectly balanced, but you wouldn't want to make a break here because that doesn't make sense to break someone's name in half. So if you, there's probably lots of different places you can break, but probably the one that's most intuitive is going to be this one. And then again, another thing you could do is just, well, let's go back to 12 point and all fit on one line. And that would probably be the better choice. But either path would be fine. So I think at this point we are done with the caption, including the document title. Let me go back and just show you this material so you can go ahead and copy it. I'll leave it on here for a second, and if you'd pause me and copy all the stuff down, and I will now advance. Be sure to copy the information down so that you are in good shape. And I'm going to go down to J, and now to O, and now to R, and there we go. So now I'm just going to show you a few captions so you have a flavor of them. As I said, as I'm looking at this caption, you can probably see some problems right away. One is that plaintiffs is not tabbed over. Another problem is that Larry Baxter is the only plaintiff. This one's a little bit trickier to explain. It's a procedural move. Larry Baxter is suing on behalf of Madeline Hebert, who is not old enough to sue on her own. And so he's really not suing in his own capacity, but just as a representative for Madeline. So therefore, this really should be plaintiff, and it should be tabbed over. Again, this is just one defendant here, Chuck E. Cheese's and its corporation, and so this should be defendant as well, and it should be tabbed over. We don't want any of the funky fonts or the italics here. And then another problem is that we seem to have a bit different spacing here. I'm guessing it's because we picked a weird font here, which has caused the height of the line to be a little bit different, but we don't want that to look different. This is not the best name for the document. It should be First Original Petition. And we can see here that the writer chose to use small caps. It's not how we're going to do things, but it's perfectly fine. No problem with using small caps if that's the preference. Here, this is a federal court title, but this is a really nice title. We can see here, though, that this last what do we call it, section is a little bit out of whack, and so we would not want to use that. My guess is if this weren't PDF'd, if we had this in Word format, we'd see that there was some spacing going on here. But on the positive side, we can see this is a nice caption. The one thing I would say is that we're not going to capitalize the names of parties. Let's look at this one. You may recall in an earlier lecture I talked about how sometimes models don't even attempt to do a caption because they know you're going to want to go with your own caption. Here's an example of one of those captions that isn't really even an attempt at a caption. This is not well put together, but it doesn't have any section signs or anything, and so this just kind of shows you what you want in your caption. Doesn't show you where you want to put it or how you want to format it. Here we have, here are some examples of some captions here. Again, we're not going to capitalize the names of our parties, but otherwise, this is good. We can see there's more than one plaintiff, so that's correct. We can see more than one defendant. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 defendants, and of course, Tony Scott is doing business as Tony Romans. So this looks correct. And we can see this is a little bit lower than I would like. I'd like to have this maybe a line higher. And they don't have a section symbol above and below, but it's not a bad attempt. You can see here's how you might do it in a different court, in the county court instead of in the district court. And you can see here everything is capitalized. Again, that's fine for other law firms, but this isn't the way we're going to do it. You can see that they superscripted the court number here, the ordinal number in that location. So again, all of these examples I'm providing, but you can see each one of these examples has something not quite right about it. That's one of the reasons I show you, so you can see the diversity of these, and then you're in a good position once you've seen a few of these to start saying, oh, that's not how we do it, and kind of get in that habit. So rely upon the material that I'm presenting in this lecture instead of looking at the examples as being exactly what you want your documents to look like. Anyway, I thank you for your attention. Of course, as always, if you have questions, why did you do it that way? Or could you do that one more time slower or something like that? Feel free to reach out to me. I want to be sure that you know exactly how to do this, that you're comfortable doing this, so that you'll be successful in the assignment and more importantly, be successful when you're out practicing law. Take care and have a wonderful day.